And that'll be the one I probably post. But if there's a problem with it, I'll let you know, Jack, and you can share the one you have when I get back.
Great.
Next Monday. We'll give 6 o'clock. We'll just give a couple more minutes here for people to get on. Anybody wants to chime in with anything new? Hey, John.
Hey, how are you, Roger? Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, Jack.
Hi, Dan. I appreciate you sending out that update from EGLE.
Welcome. Just making my rounds, Jack.
Yep.
Dan Hamill, I got your attachments, and I've got them arranged pretty much in the order that they were listed in the email.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, we may have to jump around a little bit, Roger. I think we're good.
I did the SIO sampling for 2023 last. I put those at the end. I assume that you're going to talk about that after the other stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just that map that had the green and shaded area. Is that what you're talking about?
Let me see.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. We have the there's 3 maps that kind of a general, the 2023 sampling.
Oh, yes.
And then I had one map that had, you know, one of the, it's response activity map that we highlighted in green when SIO was doing their thing. And so, yeah, we'll figure it out.
I show 20 people.
Well, we typically start at 5 after, and so we might as well do.
Yeah, so I'm here in Chicago area helping take care of a grandson while my sister-in-law's had a girls' night a week off with her mom and her sister in California. So my son needed a little help taking care of the grandson. And they'll be coming home and eating while I'm doing this. Since we're an hour behind here. Yeah, we're pretty much, anybody want to move to the West Coast or something? We can cover all the time zones here. As Beth chuckles from what, North Carolina, South Carolina, whatever it is.
So I see that Heather is on the call. Yeah, hi. And I'm trying to remember where we left that focus group stuff, and if Heather, if we want Heather to say something about that or not. Roger, what do you think?
The focus group for coming up.
Yeah, Heather is the student who's at graduate school in Nebraska, but working with Facilis at Yale.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think that's going to be in what, June or August or something like that.
Well, I wonder if we.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember. I can't remember if Beth put it on the agenda.
I'm happy to address that later. We can do it in the fall as well. It might be better in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Heather, would you like to say something under that agenda item later in the, what is it, 5B?
Yeah, I don't want to jump your agenda, so just put me under other and I'm happy to talk then.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see if we can get through this meeting pretty quickly here.
Sounds good.
We got big news though.
You have big news?
I believe there is big news, yes.
Oh, okay.
Not from me, Dan. I guess Bicknell has it, right? I only know the rumors.
Well, there's an update on the EPA posted an update on the Gelman website.
Oh, okay,
That's the email I saw.
okay. Yeah, I
Referring to
don't know.
that. There might be more.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in on that. I just hear the rumors. Yes.
Yeah, if you go to SRSW, under the EGLE.
It's okay.
Under the EPA website, you'll see this.
I can just go straight to the EPA website too.
You can.
Yeah. I'm very talented.
If you don't know where all these websites are, you can go to SRSW and you can go to them all that way.
Hmm.
Well,
You should have received the email. Rita.
I don't think I did. Let me check. You know, I have those two emails.
Well,
That could
the
be
one
the
forwarded
issue.
from Card, right, Dan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah,
don't see it
everybody.
in the I don't see it in the personal email. Maybe it's in the UMISH one. I'm not going to check that. I have to log into UMISH for that.
Should have it automatically linked.
No, life is different with the university.
Oh, that's right. You're retired now, right?
Yes.
All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen here. And remember which one I want to share. Screen one. Actually, I want to share screen two. Share screen two. And then I want to bring up the PDFs. So this, you should be seeing the agenda here.
Yep, visible.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Roger Rayle, Chair of CARD and Chair of Cy Residents for Safe Water. This is our normal monthly meeting. We'll be having a quarterly meeting next month. And the EPA said they will be there for that one. So I'm going to turn it over to, well, first of all, I want to remind everybody that this meeting is recorded and will be posted after we're done. And we post it to YouTube, and YouTube creates a transcript so you can search for keywords. I'm going to turn it over first to Beth, our secretary, for the minutes from last month.
Yes, thank you, Roger. Before we go into the minutes for next month, if anybody is not on my email list, and I do see some names that I'm not familiar with, a few of you I just added to within the last week or so, but if I don't have your email, if you could private message me in the chat, or that way you can get, the links for future months and other information. And so we are going to approve the April minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look at it? And are there any comments, questions? Or if not, do I have a motion to approve the April minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Beth.
I'm going to turn it over to Jack. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you. I'm Jack Eaton. I'm the executive director. I'll be guiding us through our agenda this evening. First up is the EPA update. Is there anyone here from the EPA? I didn't see anybody pop in. Is there anyone from Debbie Dingell's office?
Yes, hi. I'm here tonight. Hi, everyone. This is Georgia. So I just wanted to say that
You got an echo.
Georgia, you have a horrible echo. I don't know.
Okay. Does it still sound that way?
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone know how to fix that?
You might have two mics on at the same time, your computer and your headset.
You can also turn off your microphone. I mean, turn off the microphone, turn off the speaker on your computer. Just mute you won't hear us. So when you're talking, just mute your speaker, and that'll keep the echo from happening.
Okay, how does it sound now?
Better.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, change some settings around. Sorry about that. I hope I didn't burst anyone's eardrums with a horrifying Zoom noise. I know how that goes. So yeah, at this time, I wanted to say that there isn't anything that I've been asked to share specifically as of the last meeting. I did want to say though that I'm really thankful that we keep getting looped in on people's analysis of the consent judgments, as well as additional updates. We really appreciate getting looped in on those things. I know some people have been reaching out to our chief in our office, some to me, some to the Congresswoman directly. And I just wanted to let you know that we really appreciate that. And the Congresswoman wants to know about any steps in this process, big or small, even if they are your points of analysis on things that have already happened. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for that, because it really helps us be on the same page with all of you. So if you could continue to loop us in when you have your analyses of different steps that have been taken at different levels of government on this issue, that would be very helpful to just continue to share it with us. And so when we have nights like these where the Congresswoman isn't able to join us, I can pass along all of that information to her. So just please continue to do that. I'd really appreciate that. And on our end, we'll make sure that we've got all of the important stuff cataloged for her as well. So please just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. And then perhaps Dan wants to tell us about the email that he sent around earlier today.
Sure, Jack. Naria Munoz, who's the NPL coordinator, wasn't able to make it today, but she sent out an email indicating that Weston has the site inspection report draft to US EPA now. And remember, the site inspection report summarizes the work they did in the field, collecting various samples, groundwater, surface water, land, things like that. And they found that there is a data limitation, not clear exactly what the data limitation might be. Potentially, they want to look at maybe solvents instead of dioxane, for example. And they're going to do some additional sampling this summer. And then they're going to redo the hazardous ranking score based on the current information. And remember, if the hazardous ranking score is generally above 50, which it was last time, they'll probably designate this site for a national priorities list Superfund site. I would say coming in probably the fall, if they get their data back in the summer.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Sorry, I didn't put my flag up. So yeah, Dan, thanks for sending that out. There was a comment, I think at the last meeting, that EPA thought they would have a score out in March. So that's being delayed as far as you know?
Well, they remember first have to have the site investigation report done, site inspection report done, and have the data reviewed. And then they use that information with all the data to generate this hazardous ranking score, which ranks the Superfund, well, which ranks sites from 0 to 100. Last time this was done, the site ranked 50, which is very high. So I don't think it was ever the expectation that they'd have the hazardous ranking score or all the work done in March. They're saying last time that would have been in the spring. And so they're on track to have their draft site inspection report done in the spring. The only nuance to that is that they're now saying they need some additional data and they intend to collect that this summer.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Dan, I'd like to know what you know about the additional data. Is it, you say they might be getting into solvents along with dioxane?
No, I don't know what they're collecting, but last time they did the site inspection, well, they did the preliminary assessment report back in 2017. They identified a data limitation as maybe having solvents being released, because remember, the state and Gelman only looked for dioxane currently and looked a little bit, very little bit, for the solvents. So I'm just speculating that maybe the additional sampling they want to do might relate to solvents, it might relate to something else. So what we have to do is we have to wait for the site inspection report to come out, and it will tell us what they see as a additional data need.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
All right, seeing no further hands here. Before I move into the EGLE update, I want to note that I put a link in the chat, and it's a link to a presentation that Rita Locke Caruso made to CLEAR, which is the Center for Leadership in Environmental Awareness and Research at Wayne State University. It's an excellent treatment of the Gelman site over the years. I highly recommend watching that. So then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Hamill.
Can I jump in real quick, Jack?
Sure.
Hold on. I got a problem here.
Environmental Awareness and Research, or CLEAR, and I'm a program coordinator along with Brendan O'Leary that is here.
I actually clicked on the link and it's playing. I gotta shrink my screen to get back to it.
Can you mute yourself?
Oh, we can listen to it again.
We just wanted to start with one slide that shows all the various ways that you
Hold
can
on,
stay
bear with
in
me.
touch with what CLEAR is doing, and particularly our website, clear.wayne.edu. Our upcoming events are always at the bottom of that page, and so
There.
well, welcome everybody. I'm Laura Tremore
No, no.
Spears, the Center for Leadership in Environmental Awareness and Research.
Go away.
You should close that. All right, go ahead.
Screens. I need 3 screens, like I said before, because I can.
They charge you for that.
Okay, well, let me jump in then. And that is, I'm looking at the chat, and there's some questions about that use different methods for Martha Haddox is mentioning that the EGLE will be using method 522 to test drinking water for PFAS. And then, oh, it's EGLE, not EPA. I'm sorry. I will change my question for later on.
All righty then. Let's move along to Dan's update. And it worked really well last month. If there's no change, just a simple statement that there's no change so that we can move right through the agenda.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would you like me to bring up the PDF?
Yeah, go ahead and start bringing up that first attachment G as it's listed, Roger. As far as the update, what's the first bullet is the 2023 CJ between EGLE and Gelman update, and then a new monitoring plan. But the CJ, where we are there, this is a figure, one of the figures from the CJ that was submitted to the court on March 23rd or 24th. There was a meeting with the court on April 20th. And the judge identified some language changes, that he wasn't set to sign it. And there's some language changes that are being worked out between Gelman. The interveners are involved. And then once that's worked out, it'll go back to the judge. Again, it's a bilateral agreement as it currently stands, because although the interveners are part of the discussions now, getting it back to the judge, they are not, as stated in earlier meetings, they are not part of the appellate court identified that they are not, are not part of the law of the suit. So it went back to EGLE and Gelman, and we negotiated a bilateral agreement, really pretty much what the Fourth Amendment CJ was previously, with some things missing and some changes to it. And so we hope to have that done here in as soon as that's resubmitted. I'm anticipating that it'll be resubmitted to the judge for review here within a week. And that's what I'm thinking. And again, I want to manage the expectations. I have not been told that. That's in the discussions and my perception. So once it goes back to the judge, then it'll be he can take a final review, and if approves, he will sign it. Now, what that means is that the CJ will be put into place as written. Now, as far as the intervention, intervention can still occur, but it has to go through what the appellate court said, that it has to go through the interveners have to submit their complaints, and then the Gelman gets a chance to review and answer those complaints. So that process is a separate process related to what the appellate court decision is. So that's where we stand. Just going over the maps. This is what was left over. This is what one of the maps as far as the monitoring well installation activities that are remaining and will be done. As you can see here, location. Basically, all the locations except F and G have been installed. The F and G have not been installed yet. Those wells there, and will be as soon as the CJ is signed. Now, when I mean will be as soon as, I mean there'll be a schedule to get mobilized. All the other locations have monitoring wells in them. And in fact, Roger, if you go to that, if you go to the last map, the one with the green, the response activity map, not that one. Yeah, that one. As you can see here, this is one of the maps that I've shared in the past. There is the monitoring well numbers, and it tells how many wells are at each location. There's anywhere from 1 to 3 wells at each location. And so as you can see there, it's a different location ID, but the 2 blue dots are the what is currently left over to be installed after the CJ. Then once those are installed, then all the wells that Roger has his cursor over, those have been removed. Those were the wells that were not removed, but moved to a different section of the downgrading investigation section of the CJ. So they have not been identified yet for immediate installation, but they are wells in that area are part of the downgrading investigation. And we will continue to move forward once the CJ is signed to implement the downgrading investigation, get a work plan from Gelman, and start some additional wells. Going back, Roger, why don't you go ahead back to the other one? Yeah, on site. We don't really need.
Not this one.
Yeah, I mean, that, like I said, one last comment. This does identify the current prohibition zone, the expanded prohibition zone that was part of the CJ. So that red line is the area where it has been expanded to.
The new expanded.
The new expanded, right. That is that was made as part of this fourth amended CJ.
Okay, you want me to go to I?
Yes, go to I, please. This is another figure from the current CJ. It just identifies the on-site treatment areas that as part of this CJ. As I've said in the past, there are on-site extraction wells that are part of this process. The wells TW24 and TW25 have already been installed. They were installed as part of the response activity order. In fact, TW24 was installed even previous to that. And so they have been installed and are currently pumping and being treated through the Gelman system. The other areas, go ahead. Did I hear a comment?
Somebody cleared his throat.
Okay. The other areas that is still remaining in this current CJ is the marshy area as identified there. What has been changed with the marshy area is previously it was phyto remediation was identified to be conducted in the marshy area. What we had asked for in the negotiations is we wanted to have them do a feasibility study and evaluate and present how they got to the previous decision of phyto, if that's the most efficient remediation activities for a marshy area. So the first step in this CJ is to do a feasibility study where they'll present and evaluate cost response activities or remediation activities that can be used in this area, and then make a suggestion or a recommendation based upon that feasibility study. So we're going to get some data. We're going to get some information and see how, rather than just going straight to phyto. Phyto may, in the end, be the chosen action, but we wanted to make sure all things are evaluated so we can get the most efficient response activity, remediation activity in this area.
Well,
The
before
other,
So,
can I interject one quick question? Or
I
comment?
got, Rita has her hand up too.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's been a lot. I'll talk about the wells that we know about in the marshy area that we don't have data for later.
Okay. Rita, did you want
yeah,
to?
I would just be grateful if Roger or Dan, one of you could just show where the marshy area is on this map. Because sometimes, yeah.
I'm sorry. I know about it. You can hardly read your writing.
Yeah, I can't read it. No.
I know that's because
I'm zooming
Okay,
in.
I
Does
see
that
it.
help?
Okay, great. Okay.
in this
Right.
area previously in the other CJ, the fourth amended that was voted and not accepted by the stakeholders, you guys. This had already what was identified there as phytoremediation. There was that remediation activity was planned for here, which planting of trees and utilizing phyto activity to do some contaminated groundwater removal and withdrawal of contaminated groundwater. On this map too, there's the former pond area is still a treatment area in the new CJ. It has, if you remember, they have already implemented phytoremediation in this area. And in fact, I didn't give you a figure, Roger, but in the past, I've shown you where they planted trees on the property. So in fact, well, you're Roger, good. That is
Pull up Google Earth where you can actually see the aerial photographs
yes.
where they planted the
So
trees.
they have started that activity. That was started under the response activity order back in June 2021. And that was ordered by the court. And so they will continue with the phytoremediation in this area. So that's another area of, that's been remaining in the treatment area of the property area. One last statement, like I said, they have installed TW25, TW24. There is one other extraction well that is identified and will be required as part of this new fourth amended CJ. The location is not identified right now. That will be a location that we will be working with Gelman to place a extraction well in an area that will give the most efficient removal of contaminated groundwater. Just a little bit of before they under the response activity orders, they attempted to do a third well. And they attempted that down along Third Sister Lake there, down along just on their property near Third Sister Lake. And what happened was geologic material that they encountered was not a very good water bearing zone. So they really couldn't extract significant groundwater. So it was a test boring basically. And they abandoned that, and but they are required to install another extraction well in a contaminated area on the property, plummet into their system and treat contaminated groundwater. Yes.
Yeah. What's the designation for that test well?
I don't know. I don't recall what that was. Whether they even had one. Where they had done that. I would have to go back, Roger. I can't answer that question right now. I will make a note. I'll check it out.
Did they pull a permit for
that? Again, they were pulling permits as required. I know for the other ones, I don't know.
But that would be the handle that we could link the.
Yep, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. I don't have that information. I didn't gather that information for the meeting tonight.
So let me just go back to your.
Yeah, let's see here. What could be the, that's really, you wanted an update on the CJ, as far as the court, where there'll be a new CJ submitted to the court with revised language as the judge had suggested, and then it'll be reviewed again by the court. The initial activities as far as the on the map. In fact, Roger, go ahead back to that first map. I skipped over a bullet that I had here. One of the other things is the Rosewell remediation area. The Rosewell will be, an extraction well will be installed at this location. Or the IW2, which was an injection well previously, may be modified to become an extraction well, or both will occur.
Oh,
As stated in the CJ, both could occur. We could have two extraction wells there, but in that area, general area, an extraction well will be put in, and it will be put into the system. It will be basically the infrastructure will be connected to the existing infrastructure for pumping contaminated groundwater from Maple Road and the Evergreen area, and getting it across to the treatment system under using that deep
wait a minute.
piping. So that is one of the things that I do want to point out. I know I had some questions individually, was that well will be installed, or we will be plumbed into the existing infrastructure. And then from that eastern area, there will be still a total of, as it stands now, still a total of 200 gallons a minute will be pumped from the eastern area. That the eastern area would include the Maple Road wells that are currently pumping, the Evergreen wells that are pumping LP4, and the Rosewell area. So adding all those up, that still remains the maximum that they can pump because of the piping, the infrastructure across to be treated will be 200 gallons. So what will occur is they will basically manipulate or the pumping to basically pump, the areas that have highest contamination to get that maximum. In the CJ, they do have to, there is some language that says that they do have to pump a minimum of 100 gallons a minute from the Evergreen well, the LB4 well. So that will always still remain 100. That's part of the language in the CJ. The rest of the language related to Maple and Rose allows them to manipulate the pumping at each of those locations. So when you add everything up, there is a limit of 200 gallons a minute. So what is the actual pumping in the eastern area is related. It's related to meeting the objective of the prohibition zone objective, which is that contaminated groundwater can't leave the prohibition zone at a concentration higher than 7.2 parts per billion. So they will move the pumping around, different pumping at the different extraction wells to make sure that objective is continuously met.
Dan?
Yes.
Given that the transmission pipeline broke once before and they relined the horizontal well with a 4-inch transmission pipeline, what if this new transmission pipeline breaks?
There is no, what do you mean new line? There is no new pipeline from.
Yeah, it is. They're using the horizontal well.
Right. Oh, okay. I'm mixing up, Roger. Yes, they've been using that horizontal well since, I don't know the date.
Since the original transmission pipeline broke. And during that time it was broken, they were required to remediate the Evergreen area, so they kept pumping for a while, and some of that leak went out into the aquifer, of course. But what happens if this new, what can you tell us about the contingencies for if the current transmission pipeline breaks? What's their plan? Because
I mean, they would have to follow the CJ, which requires extraction in the eastern area and send it to the treatment again to meet the objectives. So
yeah, but they don't have a backup for the transmission pipeline, as far as I know.
They do. You are correct. So they would have to replace that or come up with an alternative to maintain any pumping required to meet the objective, the prohibition zone objective.
Given it's already happened once, has that been part of the discussion at all?
I mean, you mean negotiations?
Yeah.
If the CJ is only to the degree of what, we have to have language in there that identifies that actions will be taking to maintain the pumping required to meet the prohibition zone objective.
But as far as I haven't heard any contingency plans for if the transmission pipeline breaks and everything. All the glorious plans of 200 gallons a minute.
There's not a contingency plan identified specifically for that
Yeah.
potential in the language of the current.
It doesn't sound like there's any contingency plans other than say we're going to have to do something if it does break. There's no actual plans. There's just
no, there is not. There's not a written plan right now, and there's not a as it's just related to the activities will have to be done to maintain the prohibition zone objectives.
Yeah, well, that's something we warned about when they went ahead and bypassed the local government's rules for installing pipelines. When they went underneath and used a different set of government rules to bypass the local government rules. And the local governments are right on this, that it was not a good idea to do this deep pipeline because something breaks. First of all, you don't know where the break is. You can't just open a manhole and look at it. So that I just wanted everybody to know that this is still a back of the napkin plan as far as I'm concerned.
They do yearly maintenance on that deep pipeline. They
dig it out. I know.
Dig it out. They do pressure readings. So that is O&M of that pipeline. But Roger, there's not a specific language in the
So
CJ.
we'll keep our fingers crossed for the next several decades as that continues to be used. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. The next thing is on that same item is a new monitoring plan. Why don't you leave this up, Roger? In fact, go out, zoom out a little bit. The new monitoring plan will be prepared as the CJ requires after all the monitoring wells are installed. So that location F and G, once they are installed and sampled initially, then Gelman will prepare and we will review a new monitoring plan for all the monitoring wells in the Gelman site, not just these new ones. All of the wells will be reevaluated to modify the existing monitoring plans, and that part of that process in the western area to meet the non-expansion objective of the western area, there are going to be compliance monitoring wells that will be identified. There are currently compliance monitoring wells that are identified under the third CJ. And so they are the wells that will be used to identify if the objective, the non-expansion objective is being met. So those wells will be sampled and then compared to the 7.2 criteria. If it goes above 7.2, then they are not meeting the non-expansion objectives, and there's activities that they are required to do to come back into compliance.
Yeah, the third the compliance wells that were mentioned under the third consent judgment, one set of them is gone. MW, what, 63, 62?
64, 62, yes. What I'm getting at is that we will
the rest of them will still
look at all the water monitor wells, the old ones, the ones that are previously existing, these new ones, and a whole new plan for the entire Gelman area of a monitoring plan will be identified. And so all the wells that are currently being used and the new ones will have a plan of how often they are sampled. And so it will change from the existing plan of what they are doing under the third. It's just we have to get those last wells in. They have to sample those initially, get to make sure and get a baseline concentration, and then we will be discussing with them what will occur. Again, we will utilize, or we are going to require them to utilize trend analysis to change sampling to make adjustments to the frequency of sampling. So we will bring that to you as you have asked that in the past. That's really all I had for A, unless anybody has any other questions. The next request for information, Jack, I have no update. Like I have no update with that that I can give this evening. So that question still remains.
Okay, we can move on to the next one then.
Yeah, the Washtenaw County Health Department homeowner well sampling. Basically, I will be mentioning it, or I may refer to it as a long-term monitoring. We do that yearly. Roger, if you should have a something.
You got the south, the north, and the both.
Both. Do the both for now. These are the areas that we will be sampling the monitoring wells in. Residential wells, not monitoring wells, residential wells. And there are approximately, right now, because we did add that Ann Arbor Township sampling into that, the ones we've been confirmation samples and the split sampling. And there are proposed 250 wells will be in this year's sampling. That sampling is tentatively scheduled to start with Washtenaw County. Washtenaw County, we work in partnership with them, and they will start that sampling for us in June, tentatively, early June. Again, there's approximately 250 total samples to be collected. The actual number we won't know, because if people aren't home or they can't get access or whatever, they may not be able to sample a particular address, at the time they are there. So that address may not get sampled. So this is kind of an expansion. I do want to point out, and this is the north one, Roger. Yeah. That we have also included in that 250 samples selected Scioto Township wells. Based upon the work that Scioto Township did. We're not going back and sampling all of the wells that they have done in the past. Jenny and I, we kind of came up with a subset of that to just go back and check current conditions in Scioto Township. So once, again, the sampling will start in June. It will not be completed. They don't do it all at once. They do it in several sampling events because of personnel, and then also laboratory space, laboratory capacity and space for the 1,4-dioxane. So the sampling will go from June, let's say, till the end of August. So in between that time frame, they'll collect those 250 or proposed 250 wells. I do want to point out that as part of this plan, we added after the work, or after the information and the work in the Ann Arbor Township at 2433 Blueberry Lane, we added another sampling of that facility, or that residence, at the end of the sampling, at the end of the summer, the last sampling event, though, that will take another sample to identify current conditions at that property. If you remember,
that's part of the 250, or is that a 251?
Yes, that's part of the 250. There was originally 244, but all the work we've done at 2433 Blueberry, the samples that have already been collected, and the one at the end of the summer there, that brings it up to approximately 250 potential locations under this 2023 long-term monitoring sampling.
Yeah.
So Vince, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Glad to see more monitoring to the north. Has EGLE decided or made a comment that they feel the plume has moved north towards the Huron River and approaching the Huron River? And is that a concern of EGLE's regarding wells and potential contamination of the river?
Well, I'm not, as far as your first, have we made a determination?
The plume
you have positive detections. That's very low concentration. And as I've always said, we evaluate, the Gelman site related to the 7.2 criteria and any trends that way. So all these low, locations, these low concentrations, even into the north, I mean, it is an indication that, the groundwater contamination is in that area. But it is, this long-term monitoring is utilized not as a final check. It's utilized to determine if there's an immediate risk. Is someone drinking water at a concentration greater than 7.2? So that's how we plan the sampling out. So we will keep, basically with that information on Scioto Township and potentially the Ann Arbor Township, if that, turns into, that is a positive detection, that we will, maintain and keep our eye on that. But the monitoring plan that Gelman has to implement as part of the CJ, will be sampling the monitoring wells, and those are all, those will be evaluated. We keep we keep that, and that will only be expanded if concentrations in monitoring wells start expanding and indicate that additional monitoring wells are needed. So as far as we will continue to do monitoring with these residential wells yearly. I do want to manage expectations. We are doing some sampling in Scioto Township this year. It will be reevaluated next year. And I will tell you the whole objective of the plan. I mean, this is not just the Gelman, but we do long-term monitoring at many sites across the state. The objective is to make sure no one's at an immediate risk. So with that in mind, if we will, more likely not always go out every year as far as we did related to the SIO, we will, do the wells more closer to the actual plume, the plume where higher concentrations approaching the 7.2, these first residents would be impacted.
So has EGLE made any comment about the severity of this plume migration or potential plume migration? Or are they still waiting for more data, or are they concerned?
I'm not quite sure have we made any comments? I mean, we identify with what with the tools. We're updating our Rockworks model, and we will have, like
Okay,
Roger has.
So their hair is not on fire?
I'm not quite sure. You mean, have we sent out a press release or something like that? No, we were monitoring as, related to the 7.2 criteria.
Right, but even if it's below 7.2, it's still an indication of a plume movement, potentially, plume movement. And I think
potentially the CJ in the western area is a non-expensive objective. We evaluate that. The CJ in the eastern area, it's the prohibition zone objective to make sure 7.2 doesn't go outside the prohibition zone. We monitor that.
there's a lot of concern in the area about.
I understand that,
findings.
and I can tell you what, we really can't have, actionable items that, it's until the 7.2. That's the criteria that.
We gotta tighten the criteria.
Pardon me?
I say if the legislature tightens the criteria.
Well, if that, as I've always said, if the criteria changes, we will regulate to the new criteria.
Right.
We just can't, we can't. Yes.
This is Heather Lawver. I'm a doctoral student. I had a question about whether or not you guys or anyone is working directly with the departments of public health on sampling humans, and what is going to be the criteria of exposed versus unexposed. What are you considering right now as exposed versus unexposed?
That it's not RRD. It's not my division. We are regulating the plume. DHHS. I don't have any knowledge that they have done any, with the state health agency have done or are planning anything at that. Kristen, she has her hand up. I was, is the local health department. I do not know if they have done any of that, but what we handle at remediation redevelopment division is the actual oversight of the Gelman company related to their cleanup and of the Gelman groundwater contamination.
Okay, so no interaction so far. Kristen, can you comment on what's?
Hi, Heather. I'm
what are you
Kristen
guys
Claypool.
thinking?
I'm the Environmental Health Director with the Washington County Health Department. At this time, well, the local health department doesn't typically take the lead in like a blood testing of humans. That would be the state health department. That has not been discussed that I'm aware of, at least not recently. Although I will say, and maybe Rita LaCruso can speak to this, because I believe the Superfund Center out of Yale had made a lot of remarks 2 meetings ago about some blood testing in the area. That was the first and only time I've really heard about that. And I don't know if Rita's got any more, or if I think that's on the agenda somewhere else if there's an update.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't, and Heather actually is working with Vasilis Vasilou at Yale. So he's helping, he's on, I don't know what, he's involved in your dissertation committee or something.
Yeah,
Right?
we obviously we bat around those ideas, but we wouldn't want to do them on our own. So
Yeah.
I can wait until other business to discuss what I think. I haven't been as closely in touch with Yale recently. So if there've been changes on that, or if they've been writing grants, I don't know. My work is free, so.
There has not been any.
We've not spoken to anyone from Yale, and nobody's reached out to my knowledge. So not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
As far as the state health department, there's not been any recent, I don't know of any discussion or any plans. I don't know even, I don't think there's very much been historically either, but again, that's not my division, and I haven't really gone through any of the records down along those lines.
Okay, thank you, Dan, appreciate it.
Okay, so we're about 40 minutes into Dan's 40 minutes, so if we can move along.
Yeah, so that was a sampling update, Roger.
I just wanted to point out what I did. I took Dan's image and overlaid it onto Google Earth. So you can see where in the yellow here, where SIO's 522 sampling found this, and how the overlay matches up with the 522, and it matches up pretty well, except for maybe this area here and a little bit down here. So
I will also want to point out, I know I'll get the question maybe, is that we will be utilizing our laboratory, which our laboratory uses method 8260 SIM, and the detection level or the reporting level is 0.5 parts per billion. So some of these SIO township wells were lower than 0.5 between their reporting limit of 0.12 and 0.5. So, we may be sampling where our method may get a non-detect. Again, what we are trying to do is just get a current snapshot of the current condition, and has that changed, from historic, and last year's or a couple of years ago sampling.
and here's all the SIO samples they did. These were the non-detect ones that just popped up. So about 1/5 of their samples had hits at the 522 method. So the state sampling is going to miss maybe 40% of the hits that SIO had if the numbers work out the same.
Again, the objective of this sampling is to determine if someone has an immediate risk. So
yeah, but immediate is between 0.5 and 0.12. So anyway, here's the go back to the agenda.
As far as an update on the MS4, I don't have an update, Jack. I was not able to talk with Water Resources. Last I knew is they were engaging with Gelman. I do not believe they have gotten a, kind of a response, an official response back from Gelman. Our Water Resources Division will be handling the MS4 issue with Gelman, a separate issue, not part of this CJ. So I will keep you updated when new information comes. I get new information from my Water Resources group. The next one is the GSI work plan for the Allen Creek drain system. Basically, the GSI work plans for both the western and eastern areas are part of this current CJ. Once the CJ is signed, we will re-engage with Gelman to move those work plans forward. They have in both areas submitted work plans. We've made comments, but we do not have a revised draft work plan from them. They're with the appellate court with what was going on. We have, so that had stopped during that process. Once the CJ is signed, we will re-engage and get a revised work plan and continue on with our review and approval of that. Once that's done, then we will, we will require, the CJ requires Gelman to implement the work plan for the GSI investigations. As far as F, Water Resources Division, I do not have an update on the current state. I did not get an update update from Water Resources, the permit about the NPDES permit renewal. Basically, for those that don't know, is what that is referring to is Gelman has a current permit to discharge treated groundwater from their remediation system. And all this, they had started that process some years ago to renew it. And our Water Resources Division is the ones that review it and renews it. And that's very good. And so they are in that process, in part of that process. So they are toward the end of that process. And I expect that there'll be some, especially with what has gone on more recently, some information about the renewal. But currently, as allowed under the law, that until the permit is renewed, that Gelman can utilize the old permit and meet as long as they meet all the conditions of the old permit. And I really don't have anything under what's new. I've talked about everything. I already told you that we will be sampling that 2433 at the end of the summer as part of the long-term monitoring. So we'll have another snapshot after, in a couple of months. If you remember, the last sampling from January, February, March was the 3-month evaluation that everything was non-detect. So the early detections back in November and October, November, they have since then, there have been no detections from all laboratories, from any of the labs and any of the parties that sampled, including the EPA. The EPA came out in February and March and split samples with us, with Ann Arbor Township and EGLE, and their analysis using several methods were non-detect at this time. So we're going to take another look at it at the end of the summer and make a final determination on where we go from there.
Dan, this is Dan Bicknell. I'd like to point out that it was twice you had confirmations at 2433. The first time it was 9.1, and the next month it was 1.9 parts per billion dioxin. So there are 2 months
positive detections
where that occurred.
Again, it was the Ann Arbor Township. It was a particular lab. So well, the information we have now is the 3 months of more than 3 months in December too. Everything has been non-detect since that time. So we will take another look at it and reevaluate and see where to go from there.
Right, but there were 2 times that the top quality lab did identify using method 522 dioxane at 2433. It was 9.1, and the next one it was 1.9.
I understand, Dan, but I am also going to point out that their QA/QC for those 2 sampling events was not as good as it could have been. So that's
just a total fabrication. Mr. Hamill. That's there's no basis
Well,
for that.
that's our interpretation on our side, but Dan, we're not saying that. What we're saying is we had all this other information, lines of evidence that did not show at this time, but we're going to go back and take another look at it. So I'm not, I'm just saying what the data is presenting. So you stating absolutely that there was confirmation. Yes, there was a detection. We went out and evaluated that detection. We are not getting more confirmation that detection was an accurate detection. So we're going to take a look at the end of the summer, and we're going to evaluate that. We'll make that data available to everybody. I will also say that we provided bottled water just as a precaution because of those initial detections, and we are continuing to provide that bottled water until till the end of the summer, or till we get another confirmation sample and see where we go.
And this will be covered under 5D a little bit too.
Okay.
Yes, but I just want to clarify that, Ann Arbor Charter Township is using the best analytical method possible, method 522, where the state is not. It's using an inferior method. And what we did is
the method we are using is an EPA approved method. Well, you're stating stuff now, so I want to make sure that
I don't think that this is the time or the place for this particular.
Yes, I don't think so
We've
either.
talked about this before, and everybody has.
We do have a hand ups. Go ahead, James.
Well, hopefully I'm not throwing gasoline on the fire, but I'm looking in the chat. There are discussions, and granted, I'm talking about PFAS versus dioxane. There's discussion that EGLE is using method 533 versus 522 for PFAS. Just very quickly, what is the difference between the two? And is this relevant in terms of the discussion this evening?
The short answer is not relevant because it's different methodologies for different chemicals. The dioxane, there's two basic methods. The one that US EPA recommends is method 522, which is for semi-volatile chemicals. The other method is what Dan's referencing, 8260, and that's for volatile chemicals. And the problem that we have is that the state is using a method that's not recommended by EPA for drinking water. And that's why the state is not finding, at least in the second sampling, the result which we found. We found it was 9.1 our first month and 1.9 the second month, in which the state didn't find anything. So you just got to include all of the data, please, Dan, when you're talking about this.
But Dan, all the other samplings that were gone as split samples, the method 522 from several, including
right. Well,
EPA,
yes, that's correct.
EPA was non-detect. So
that's correct. That's correct. But that doesn't mean that the 9.1 and the 1.9 didn't exist, which is what some people are trying to portray.
I will say, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that scientifically, you're looking at the data that, okay, that's why we're going back in the fall. Let's take another look at it. We're not trying to say that it wasn't detected, but lines of evidence, identify that, hey, what was that initial detection, and why you said
excuse me, but you said that the data that was collected by Ann Arbor Charter Township had flaws in it, and that's not correct. It didn't have any quality assurance flaws in it.
I'd like to move along.
Yes, please.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Bicknell in particular, for the clarification on this.
Thanks. Okay, put your hand down, James. I don't see Patty on the participant list.
I have an update from Patty. She has a conflict now on Tuesday evenings and apologized. She will be at the quarterly next month. They are doing sampling on the Sentinel wells next week, and they're going to be doing some aquifer testing later this month in the city. So she didn't elaborate on that, but she will update us at the June meeting on both of those things.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
I'm moving on to item 5B, Heather, this would be the time for you to discuss what you wanted to bring forward, I think.
Okay, yeah, super. So just real quick for those who haven't met me, doctoral program student, and I'm looking at the health impacts of what's going on here. Looking at 1,4-dioxane in a number of cities around the country, but focusing really on Michigan. This summer, I have an opportunity to come out and either conduct a survey or what I would suggest at this point, because I need IRB review before I can actually interact with humans, is to have an informal discussion either with CARD or officials. I'd love to meet with the public health department to see what kind of survey could be done in the area, really looking at a couple things. What could have been done? So my doctorate is in health policy, sorry. So two things: what could have been done earlier in the process, once first identification or awareness that exposure was happening, what could have been done politically from a number of stakeholder perspectives earlier? And then secondly, how can we prevent this in the future? So, but I'm looking specifically at human exposure. So I appreciate that you're going on an EPA national priority list, hopefully, and that would be a super thing in terms of cleaning up the water. My interest really is, isn't there a mechanism that we can link that to actually human exposure earlier in the process so that people have better recourse and better awareness of what's going on with their own health earlier in the process, primarily to prevent it or to stop it earlier. As you can see, it's extremely expensive to monitor a plume and try to reroute irrigation systems. So I think we can all agree that maybe an upstream approach, no pun intended, might be better. So I'd love to brainstorm with people about what a survey of the community might entail. It has to be community-based, but more specifically, I'm kind of working pro bono on this during the doctorate level. I'm probably going to continue with Yale maybe in the future on this, but for now, I'm in a camper coming out July 12th through probably the 14th only. And then I could come back maybe in the fall, or maybe in mid-August or late August. So those are really the dates. I know that that's prime vacation time. So at any rate, I'd love to work with someone who can help coordinate meetings of interest and stakeholders of interest and come back at a time that might be helpful for those discussions, a preliminary, and then one to actually conduct a survey, probably in the fall after my IRB is approved. Thanks.
Thank you. Rita, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point?
Sure. A couple of things I can say. One is that the Yale Center is preparing to have its annual meeting. It will be on June 8th and 9th, and that will be when the external advisors come. And I will be there because I'm an external advisor for the center. And the different groups are going to present their progress and their plans for working on the 1,4-dioxane research that they proposed and are funded to do with this center. Also, I'm going to I'll cut and paste into the chat when I'm done talking, a link to that where a webinar by the Yale Center will be posted. It's not posted yet. If you missed it, there was a Superfund research program research webinar. It's called Clue In. EPA has this Clue In series. And Yale was part of a 2-hour webinar last Friday. They're the third presenter, but I will post all that with the link into the chat, and it's not up yet. It looks like they're about a week behind. And since their webinar was just last Friday, it probably will be up by the end of this week. And people could, if they're interested in learning more about what the Yale Center is doing and what they're about, that would be a good place to go to listen to that webinar.
Is it
So,
at Yale, Rita?
I'm sorry?
you said Yale's hosting this. Is it at Yale?
Yale is having their annual meeting
In New
of
Haven?
the center at Yale on
Okay.
June 8th and 9th. Yes. So, and yeah, it's in person and I am going. Yeah.
I'll try to be there. Okay.
Yes, that would be great. Okay.
Super.
So I think that's all I have to present at this time. I think everybody's a little busy. And I do think it is formidable. Kristen, I appreciate your comments. And it is true, the Yale Center, I think the people are very interested in working with us. These centers, it sounds like they get a lot of money, but I can tell you that they cut all the Superfund research program centers this year. They cut their budgets. So it's kind of tough. I know people at Wayne State and I know people at Yale. So, but I think, we still have this opportunity and we're going to, I think the more we can work with them, the better. And also, I guess I could say that, Wayne State University, they also are a newly funded Superfund research program center. And their theme is urban waters, is pollution of urban waters. And they have people at Wayne, they don't have a project in their center to study 1,4-dioxane, but I know that they have researchers at Wayne who are interested in 1,4-dioxane. So just something to kind of keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item? All right, I'm going to move on to C and ask Kathy if there's any update on the intervener update.
Well, Dan gave a fairly comprehensive overview of this. The order has not yet been entered. I was told that Gelman and EGLE were working on one sentence to be revised in the order, but we'll see. The interveners have until July 1st to file complaints. And that's basically my update.
Thank you.
Yep.
And as far as we know, there's no hearing scheduled or anything.
Correct. There is not. The judge denied the request for a public comment period. The hearing has already occurred that was to have occurred.
That's what I meant.
On entry of the order. That already occurred.
Yeah.
All righty. Any other questions or comments? Moving on, is Mike Moran here?
No, he's out of town, but he sent an email saying that they're going to be doing testing on the Ann Arbor Township wells. I think later this summer. Dan Bicknell, are you still on?
I can read his email. It said the next Board of Trustees meeting, the board will be presented with a proposal from Tetra Tech to conduct the next round of testing. It will encompass 20+ residences around the Blueberry Lane residence that had the 9.1 and 1.9 samples, as well as that resident again using method 522.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything more on this? All right, Kathy, do you have an update on the Knights of Columbus property?
Actually, I do. I heard yesterday that the developers are requesting placement on the Planning Commission agenda, and they're tentatively scheduled to be on that agenda for the second meeting in May for our Planning Commission. You might recall I had described previously how there had been a series of meetings at Scioto Township consisting of members of the Planning Commission, the Township Board, our planner, our civil engineers, and Larry Lemke to advise on hydrogeology issues on this site. Originally, the developer was proposing a community well. They are now proposing hooking up to municipal water from Ann Arbor. So their plan has changed somewhat, but they are still proposing an on-site sewer system. So because of this site's proximity to the plume and multiple detections close by, we had requested that they conduct a hydrogeology study before they went in front of the Planning Commission for preliminary site plan approval. However, they initially gave us the impression that they were going to do that. As I said, we had several meetings. Larry Lemke discussed this issue with them in detail. They had hired a hydrogeology consultant, but now they want to be on the Planning Commission without completing the study. They are saying that they will share the plan to do the study, but no data from the study at this time will be shared because there isn't any data. So we'll see how this goes. There are a couple Scioto Township planning commissioners actually watching this meeting right now. Bob Hyde is on the meeting, and he was present with me and Will Hathaway, our supervisor, for most of these meetings with the developer, talking about the necessity of the hydrogeology study. So what the developer is saying is that they will perform the hydrogeology study later, but that they want to get through the preliminary site plan approval process first. So I know, James, you're going to have questions. I was surprised to hear all of this yesterday. So any questions?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, first off, just what is the date of the said planning commission meeting? It's the second meeting in May.
Well, I'll get it in a minute here.
Or you can just share in the chat.
Tentatively going to be on the agenda. It's not on it yet. So
okay.
I hesitate to say anything about it in terms of the exact meeting date, but I'll get it here.
So perhaps if it lands on a particular agenda, you could just send an email to CardCore and let us all know.
Yep.
May
I can do that.
22nd,
Okay.
Kathy.
Yep.
May 22nd. Is
22nd.
this, yeah, that's the
Okay.
second May meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Bob, did you have any other comments regarding the meetings that we had with the developer?
You summed it up pretty well. We asked them and they agreed to hold off until after the hydrogeological study was done. Why they want to come back now, I guess we're going to have to hear, aren't we?
Let me ask another question just very quickly. And either Kathy or Bob can answer this. What is the, and refresh my memory, what is the site currently zoned as in your land use plan?
Recreation.
Okay.
But it's an anomaly, James. There's nothing else like that around there.
Okay, I would imagine. And the surrounding land uses are residential or agricultural?
Memory says that they're mostly residential, but they're low density.
Okay. All right, and this is considerably higher density. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All righty. Well, I've been watching that, and as a former planning commissioner, I may decide to chime in on this one too. I think you have some very interesting questions to ask. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I have a question about the getting municipal water. How do they just request it and it comes and they paid for it. They don't have to get permission from the city. And if that's the case, we're talking about going past already contaminated homes on Elizabeth Street and
I know.
stuff.
I know the details are fluid and they have not been worked out. So originally the developer was proposing a community well. And then all of a sudden they changed that and said they found out that they could hook up to municipal water. Now, they didn't find that out from Scioto Township. But according to our utility director, the procedure has been in the past that if a developer wants to pay for extension of the water line, that they are allowed to do that. They will have to cover all of the costs, but they are allowed to do that.
Is that what happened up here at Walnut Ridge or whatever this is called?
It's a different situation.
Because that's city water.
I believe so. And
Yep.
this was a
And
while
sewer.
ago. The issues up there had to do with sewer more than water. And the water district and the sewer district are not the same. So the sewer district is almost at capacity right now.
Yeah.
And that's
that
a
was an
different issue.
For Scioto Meadows down here too. The old Smith property
Yes,
off of Liberty here.
yes. Roger, perhaps when you speak, you could address some of the issues related to the proximity of the plume to this proposed development.
Yeah, we covered that pretty extensively in other prior meetings. I don't have any slides queued up for it, but basically any groundwater changes, whether you're pumping or injecting through surface water temps at treatment ponds, is going to could change the flow of groundwater and therefore affect the flow of the contamination that's allowed to spread. It wouldn't be an issue if we cleaned up all the dioxin.
If only. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, one more question I have, and it's really not so much for Kathy or for Bob, but for you, Jack, and Kathy and Jeff as well. And that is regarding connection of outlying communities to city water. Is that a profit center for the city to do that?
I think we're limited. I think that the city is limited in what they can charge communities outside the city for water. It has to reflect the cost that we charge our own customers, but it's at a flat rate. So I believe Scioto is paying more money than you and I are paying for water.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting observation. So
it's all covered by a water supply agreement between the township and the city. And I think that's renewed every once in a while, but I don't have the details on that.
Because I'm just curious if they approach the city on that, and that would be something the township should be looking at.
Yep.
We'll look at it. I don't know what the discussions have been with the city. I don't think this issue triggers the provisions require a contract renegotiation, but there are some trigger provisions in the sewer contract. So I have to check. I don't know. The developer has stated that they've investigated it and they can do this. And our utilities director is saying, yes, they can. And I haven't gone beyond that and looked at any details.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the township, the planning commission. I hope we'll do their due diligence, and thank you.
Vince?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just would like to remind people that Rita and Dan Bicknell both spoke before City Council about the city of Ann Arbor using Detroit Water or Great Lakes Water Authority. And it was pretty much shown that the option was not that viable. The city is concerned about its water capacity. And I think it's really sad that we're going to have communities who potentially could be having trouble finding clean water. We should really be cleaning up what water we have and not expect to tap into Ann Arbor tapping into Detroit water or Scioto tapping into Detroit water. It's a major issue, and I don't know that our government until recently has really taken it seriously. I think now we have polluter pay potential coming out of Lansing, so that's a good sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the bylaw revision committee. Is there anything to report there, Dr. Wackluth?
Just that we have made progress. James and I went through the bylaws and proposed revisions, and they are up on the Google Drive. And I expect that we will hear back from the board or executive committee or the officers. Turns out we never named what that group of officers is, but so if you are an officer and you haven't looked at the proposed revisions, please do, and we will get those out to the members of the voting members of CARD for a vote, hopefully at the next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the changes look real good, and we're going to be expanding the board a little bit through those bylaws too.
All right, that sounds good. And with that, I guess I'm going to turn it over to the chair for his update.
Okay, let me see what I can show here. I think I have changed my view. Stop share and a new share. Share screen to screen one. And this will go to the, so I got to move this out of the way. And then slideshow. Are you seeing my title page here?
Yes.
Your notes. So one quick thing I want to get out of the way here is that we got the March monthly summary of sampling, and they had an error on it where they mislabeled reading an LB4 extraction well at Evergreen as LB1. And they apologized for it. That was a week after I got the spreadsheet of the monthly thing, which should have been after their QA/QC. So I sent back a response asking these questions. Oops. Why did it take 7 days? How did the error happen? Was the error carried over to the Excel DEQ formatted Excel file that Dan Hamill uses to update the Gelman database? Dan, was it carried over to the DEQ version?
Yeah, the initial version, yes. In fact, I updated it the database was updated incorrectly, but we made that correction.
Yeah, in the past, when they've had errors like this, and it's happened from time to time over the years, they always sent out an updated Excel sheet. This time, they sent out an updated PDF, but not an updated Excel sheet. And so happened when I got this, I was working on this computer that doesn't have Microsoft products. So I couldn't do the Excel update myself. So I was expecting to get a copy of the corrected spreadsheet and never got one.
Well, I guess I misspoke, Roger. They did not send out an updated. They identified that, and I corrected it in our records.
Which, they need to be reminded that's not how the process is supposed to work. It's bad enough they made an error, but they shouldn't rely on all the people who receive those data to have to correct the data. They should send out the corrected data in the format that it was originally sent out. Because once you start having people make changes that somebody else says you need to make this change, then you're introducing a possibility for more human error, which is what I think happened at the error in the first place, but I haven't heard any report of it. I got to move this out of the way too. I've got sharing my screen. I have a work thing here that I have to move out of the way. Put that over here. Okay. By the way, there have been about 225 email threads that I've been involved in over the years that have to do with data errors. And that seems to be something so last century, we should not have that happen anymore. Anyway, the fact that they didn't catch it right away, what does that say about the reliability of their QA/QC procedures, and what can we do to prevent errors like that in the future? And then there was a note I made about the LB4's XY location missing from the database, even though it seems to be on some of the maps that we see. So I just wanted people to be aware that there's things like this going on behind the scenes that can create misleading data if it's not corrected. Let's see, it's gonna let me go on to the next screen. Yeah. Last month I talked about the some of the changes that were made in the fourth consent judgment proposal. And there were some wording changes in the marshy area. Dan's already covered a little bit of that. But I wanted to point out with some images of what that means. This is an image of Gelman's plume maps of the marshy area. So there's a sandy gravel layer, and then there's a peat layer that's above that. Now it turns out these have some really high concentrations, but these are the monitoring locations that have been around for the marshy area for a number of years. Now, during the time of the secret negotiations, here are the secret locations. These are the locations that we don't have data for, that are part of the rockworks. Like EGLE's rockwork shows the locations of these, but we don't have any sampling data for these locations because it's covered under the secret negotiations. So one of the things that you notice is that in Gelman's plume maps, they're discontinuous. So the plume just kind of ends here. It doesn't continue into the adjoining property. Yet we have sample locations that probably, hopefully, provided some data that would fill out what the shape of this plume really is. So this is what happens when data gets made secret, so that you don't get the full picture. We know about some of these sample locations because this is in the marsh area. You can see it from space. You can see it from aerial photographs. This is the Google Earth layer that shows this pathways that didn't used to be there in the marshy area. So there's been activity there. Some of those may be related to these new monitoring locations. We don't know. We don't have that data. And yet we're asked to approve a proposal for the fourth CJ for the marshy area without having full definition of the problem with the marshy area. What are the readings from these? Now, maybe the lawyers have seen this, but there's a lot of people who aren't lawyers that could maybe weigh in a little better and more completely on this problem if we had the data. This is Gelman, Paul Danaher's dioxane in our waters and soils of the state that is not made public, even though it's off the original Gelman site. The original Gelman site is to the south of this area. This was not part of the original Gelman site. Gelman had to buy this little parcel here. Well, it's actually more this parcel here because of the angle here, because of the contamination. This, I think, is still owned by the Big George's Distribution Center here. I don't even know if they have the data. And it's whoever owns this property really should have that data. Anyway, I wanted to make that point. Similarly, the burn pit was completely, any reference to the burn pit was completely removed from this fourth CJ proposal. And that's even more troubling because it was the burn pit that had the very highest soil contaminations at the site, 2 million parts per billion in 1988, that had reduced to about 1 million parts per billion in 1998. And we have no complete sampling of the soils in that area since. And underneath it is this plume area on Gelman's core area plume maps. So where does this plume come from? Some of them might be coming from the burn pit here, former burn pit. Some of them might be coming from the former, they actually had leakage at the surface of pipes that broke. And this is around where the deep well injection happened. Also in this area is where they had septic fields before they built their water treatment ponds. So there's a dearth of data about where this dioxane and why is this shaped like it is when there's only 1 or 2 wells in this whole plume area here. And it seems to me that Gelman is getting away with hiding a lot of data from the public, and that should be a no-no. Maybe that's part of the reason the EPA is going back and wanting to do more sampling. Anyway, I'm going to go on. First of all, are there any questions about those two things, about the marshy area and the burn pit? The two major changes, two of the major changes in the old and new fourth consent judgment proposals. Anybody want to weigh in on that? No. So I'm still working on updating the new Google Earth mashups with data through 2022. I was kind of hoping that I would get updated data from EGLE with all of the SIO sampling. Some of the SIO sampling is in the database that I have, but I haven't had a new database since January, and here it is May. Dan Hamill, is there a new database coming anytime soon?
You mean database, you mean a monthly database update?
I'm talking about your database that you update and you share on the website. The latest one that I saw when I last checked was January.
No, it's been updated, I believe, through March. I mean, that's what
But it's not posted to the website yet?
Yeah, it had, yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah, let me.
We'll take a look at that when I'm done with this page.
Yep.
Similarly, that will get folded into the Tableau public visualizations. And in fact, I will go ahead and jump to that right now, which I think is going to be right about here. So on SRSW, we have this section that has a number of versions of the data as of 2021 in visuals. One of them is a map-oriented data, and you can look at it by year and you know, watch the contamination spread over the years laterally. It also has where it can you can look at that from west to east and look at it at a cross section where you have the surface elevation up here, the screened elevation down here, and the shaded areas around the Gelman property. And again, if we look at this, you'll see that all this contamination in these lower layers came from the upper layers, from the surface area, from Gelman's online treatment ponds, spray irrigation, overflows to the marshy area. So we're talking about everything from the surface down to bedrock being contaminated in several different directions. And this does not have the soil properties on here yet, the recent soil sampling. So dioxin has spread a long ways for years without anybody finding it. But now that we found it, there's still gaps in how did these high concentrations get here without being found, and where are they going? So this is west to east cross section. There's a south to north cross section that kind of does the same thing. You can look at that over the years. But what I want to go back to is another way to look at the data, and that is just by time. So these are all the sample points, some several 25, 30,000 sample points over the years. And this period of time is Gelman, this period of time in here is Paul Corporation, and then Danaher took over. Now, Paul Corporation took a lot of dioxin out of the ground and destroyed it. And then things kind of plateaued off as they were getting ready to sell out to Danaher. And since Danaher, it hasn't been as aggressive. Now they have been sampling and detecting below 1 part per billion. So that's why you see these really small values here. By the way, this is log scale. So and these lines here are the different target values. Like we want to get down to 7.2. Well, we have a long way to go for that. One of the things I wanted to show here today, relating to the marshy area, so we can highlight the marshy area. So here are the sample points for the marshy area. How are they doing? Well, here's one. 5,700 parts per billion, 2021. Some of them are getting down to the groundwater surface water interface values, 300. There's a couple of them that are below the old 85 parts per billion. And there might be 1 or 2 stragglers here that are down before 7.2, but none of them are way down here to non-detect. And part of that is because there's really no active remediation of the marshy area. Now, that was supposed to be part of the fourth consent judgment last time, was to have some vital remediation. Now it's back to, well, we'll give you a plan for when we're going to do the plan, basically. So this isn't going to get cleaned. This isn't going to go away on its own anytime soon. You can do this for other parts of the cleanup too. You can look at the D2. You can look at the E, and you can look at the shallow, the C3, the shallow aquifer. C3 will be up here, alphabetical order. And, there's still some really high concentrations all through this, all the different layers. These aquifer layers are Gelman's historical designations for different layers. Try to turn on the one that has the highest concentration here, and that would be MW5D. Even as recently as 2012, I think it was headed over 100,000 parts per billion within the last 10 years. And it's still several, 11,000, 18,000, 5,700 now. And this is right near where the former ponds were, and it's basically the only sampling that we have evidence for in that area at that elevation. So data is really important, because with data you can visualize things. You can get a better idea of what the problem is, and I guess that's what my point I wanted to make today was that there's a lot of data that's being withheld that we should have, so we can all make better decisions if we understand the problem better. And,
Roger, this is Heather. Wow, this is the first I've seen this data, but it's, from my perspective, it's pretty concerning. So if those EPA levels are way down at the bottom and everything else is above it, that's a real health concern.
Yeah,
so,
well, these people aren't, there's only a handful of these where people were drinking the water recently.
right. So what's important from my perspective, and this is impressive, but to get somebody from your community or Yale, or I don't know where, but to start overlaying this data with the same GPS data about human health and impact, because there's got to be some here that's going on. And I mean, if the solution to pollution is dilution, from a political standpoint, you've got a massive amount of pollution in concentrated areas, and that's ripe for cleaning up before it starts leading down the path of dispersion, which I know we're 40 years late. And I know I'm reliving history with you guys, but if the EPA is going to set some human health levels here, then they need to start prioritizing areas of the highest concentration so that they don't keep dispersing, right? This stuff isn't going away. So that would be my message as you're going down this line, is get the EPA in to clean the highest pollution areas, because they're just going to disperse. And if it's extremely expensive to get it out of the drinking water, it will go somewhere, right?
It'd be cheaper to clean it up from the burn pit in Mercier than it will be to try to clean it up in the area as it spreads.
Right. So I know I'm an outsider making this Voltairean comment, but that's concerning, because it's not going to go away. So if everything's above the EPA limit, then let's start with the source, but everyone's going to have a health concern at this point.
But it has to do with the way Michigan's laws are written and the rules were drafted and stuff.
All right. Well, my doctoral can address some of the laws that could or should be changed. So I look forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, there were court cases by communities that were affected by this, and they lost in court because they didn't have the data to back it up. And nobody wants to be the guinea pig to drink this stuff for 40 years to see what a health problem is.
But that's the point. The point is that humans are the guinea pigs.
That's right.
And that's the way, it's not just Michigan law, but that's the way US federal law even is. Commerce trumps public health.
Yeah. Well,
it's just you have to show harm. It's
commerce
very bad.
Commerce trumps commerce. I mean, these developers that want to develop the KFC site, they're being affected because the water's not clean.
Right. But I think the political winds are changing right now. So I think this is a really good time to start pointing out some of the human health impacts of all this. It's pretty data and it's alarming, but until somebody says cancer rates are increasing and they're directly linked to this issue, you're not going to have as much power politically as if you start linking those EPA issues to the human health issues. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And I'll also point out, because dioxane, once it gets anaerobic in groundwater, is a forever chemical, goes wherever water goes and stays there and will not break down on its own. It can be a good model and harbinger of what's going to happen at the tens of thousands of PFAS sites around the world. You know, which is 1,000 times more dangerous than dioxane. I worry about Lake Huron with PFAS over time. You know, if we had 850,000 pounds of dioxane used at this site over 20 years, and PFAS is 1,000 times more dangerous. Were there 850, not 850,000, but 850 pounds of PFAS used that got into the water? Because theoretically, that would be the same amount of danger as dioxane.
Right. So the policy implication is the upstream policy needs to be more stringent if we are now entering as a nation or a globe into environments where we may potentially be contaminated with really super nasty chemicals like this. The policies need to change so that we can identify it earlier and that people have earlier recourse, as opposed to this lesson here, which is 40 years later, and we still don't know if it's directly causing cancers because nobody had the data.
Well, early on, when I first got
What are
involved,
those policies?
when I first got involved, the scuttlebutt was it's thought to be a strong cancer promoter in humans, without any real data to show that, because, you know, how many other factors do you have to bring in order to prove that?
Well, it's not, I don't think it's very genotoxic. So it's not a, you know, when this contamination started, carcinogenesis was in the heyday of genotoxicity as the origin of cancer. And this 1,4-dioxane has probably got a much more complex mechanism. And that's what Vasilis is working on, trying to understand that. But lots of, you know, some stuff had been written about how 1,4-dioxane causes cancer, and some of it was not very good, you know, and even the EPA in their risk assessment discuss, for example, Mike Dowerson's work and say that, you know, a lot of his premises and assumptions are not valid. So anyway.
It might be cheaper to build a time machine and go back and not use the stuff. Just kidding.
Well, I would just want to make a point that the state of Michigan has changed dramatically.
Recently, right?
Politics have switched to a more progressive government, both governor and the Congress. And we changed how elections are held in Michigan. The gerrymandering has been reduced dramatically. But there is still, you know, contamination is here. And I'll just throw out one anecdote that we talked to a gentleman who doesn't want to be identified. He used to work at Gelman, and he said he'd get to work and he'd see buckets of water, or what he thought was effluent from the treatment for making of filters. He knew he had a long day because he saw like 50 buckets laying out to be dumped in the marsh area. And he was told, don't let anybody see you do that. And on a routine basis, that's what they did. And he said the machine had trouble. He didn't know what was going on, but it was a way, obviously, to get rid of the contamination. And they would just dump it out the back door. And had went on for quite some time. He's older now, he's retired. He was 18 at the time. That's just one example of how this contamination could have gone undetected because they were told not to be seen. So, you know, we have EPA potentially taking over the site, and we have the state of Michigan changing and talking right now about what we used to have, which was polluter pay legislation. So there's still those options are out there. And so it's not impossible to clean up the site by any means.
Yeah, that may be a deterrent, right? But at the same time, polluter pay also still implies that people are damaged or sick or otherwise impacted before that happens. So I'll be thinking about what kinds of policies could possibly be put in place to prevent that from happening in the first place.
Yeah, we welcome your input in this.
Okay, our clock is running down pretty well here, and I just want to leave enough time so that if anybody has a non-agenda item, we can raise it. So if you want to conclude, Roger.
I'm done.
Excellent. So does anybody have any item they want to discuss that's not on the agenda? All righty. Oh, hi, Kathy. Go ahead.
I just want to state that even though it's hard to believe, there is still political pressure, a political mindset against the EPA and concern about the stigma of the EPA. And I used to serve on city council, so I had access to a lot of confidential information. And I'm not going to give you that, but I will tell you that there was an internal battle to get the accurate information available to support requesting that the EPA evaluate the site for Superfund status. And this went on for at least a decade. So while Gelman has been a problem, the local community has also been a problem. And when you do your research, you also, this is for Heather, you also need to look at the role that the University of Michigan played. Why don't we have professors at the University of Michigan studying this for the last 20 years? And Rita, you might want to comment, or you might not want to say anything about this. But the fact that the University of Michigan was silent for so many years, at least publicly silent, behind the scenes, I don't know what the political pressure was, but the community has been damaged not just by the pollution in Gelman, but also by the political mindset locally. And then at the state level, the fact that we have not had even polluter accountability laws. That's the new term rather than polluter pay, polluter accountability. So I'll stop talking before I depress myself even more.
So Kathy, we had a dean speak at a card meeting saying that the university told him, he's retired, told him that not to get involved with Gelman, probably based on having money from Gelman, a small amount by any standard, but that was unfortunately the case.
Yeah.
So very quickly, Gelman gave money to the university. Gelman gave money to the School of Public Health. There was a risk science center that was put into place with Gelman money. It was a real failure, quite frankly. There was pressure not to do anything to upset Charles Gelman because he was giving money to the school. It didn't all come at once, or the biggest amount came later, but it was trickling in. So yes, there's a lot of pressure, but that's not unusual, Kathy. I think if you look at where these terrible contaminations occur in the country and when a university really gets involved, often that university has to not be in the same city. I could just sort of rattle off case after case in this country where sometimes you need something separated from the politics of the local community, to be honest.
Like Yale.
Or Wayne could come in and work here too, but
Virginia Tech.
it's just, yeah, it's just, but but for U of M scientists to work on 1,4-dioxane has been very tricky. It's just the way, it's the way of the world.
Yeah, I've been encouraging the School of Information to try to do a complete bibliography of all the student projects that involve women over the decades.
Right. The students are interested.
Because that would tell some of the story. I also do a pitch that I won't talk about right now, but the university needs to get involved because of Hill Auditorium. And we can discuss that later.
So I find it interesting that Wayne is helping us in our community, because it's hard for me to believe that Wayne doesn't have plenty of pollution to study in Detroit.
But think about it. Lots of U of M professors are helping Detroit.
Yep.
U of M has a center in Detroit. The center, I could tell you lots of examples. It's just, it's not uncommon.
Well,
I'm gonna bring this meeting to an end. It's 8 o'clock, and once it's after the recording stops, feel free to stay.
Not too long. I got to eat still.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you.